It's always live. It's a hot take. And welcome to the Hungover podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Julien, alongside
his best friend of all time ever in the history of friends. Fuck everyone else.
This guy, his name's Ivan. He does the podcast with me from time to time. Thank you so much for doing this one. Today we're going to be talking about a smorgasbord of news topics because we couldn't pick one. So we're just going to talk about all of them. Today we're going to be talking about...
We don't have time to talk about just one, Julien. There's too much stuff happening in the world.
That's the thing. There's so many things. We're going to be talking about the unspoken link between science and the military. There's a lot of funding going back and forth. We'll see. We're also going to be talking about the recent Nike ad with Mr. Kaepernick featured in it and all the backlash that Nike has been getting because of him. Or their choice to include him in the ad. And then we're also going to be talking about Hurricane Florence and the, hopefully the relief that the people will be getting along the East Coast, the southern East Coast of America. Ivan, this is episode 84. You can get this podcast. It is pretty crazy on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play on Mondays at 9 a.m. In audio form, but today we were late because life gets in the way sometimes and we have to be late sometimes, but we're gonna get one out every week regardless. So you can also get it in video form on our YouTube channel, Hungover Gaming. It's in the background there. Yeah, that's a great place to watch it. If you want to see our faces, we try to put up background visual aids for our conversation as well. You can definitely be part of the conversation as well live. You can catch this show live streamed on twitch.tv/JujuBsGood. The links are in the description below. Also, go ahead and give Comrade Boyar a follow if you'd like, because he auto-hosts me, and that's where you can watch it as well. The chat is read live, and we take all your questions into account, and we love to have you guys part of the conversation. So, Ivan, we start our podcast out every single week by asking each other, what media have you been consuming, and what did you drink last night, being this, Hungover Gaming YouTube channel?
Yeah, media has been mostly missed this past week. It's been a lot of reruns and different things. Haven't had time to get out of the house. I've been grinding a new Overwatch account to try and get it to level 25 so that we can play. Guess what? Our MMR is actually I was talking to people. My MMR is high plat, low diamond.
What is it? You can check that?
No, but I talk to people and they're like, okay. My SR is this, my SR is this.
Okay.
So hopefully it actually will end up that we'll be in, high plat, low diamond, where we'll just get our asses handed to us every
I don't think so.
time we play.
We'll just maybe enjoy, 50% of our matches. Maybe.
Which would be a higher percentage than we enjoy currently.
It's true.
But it actually has been nice to just play quick play and just play the game with heroes that I like to play. I got into Doomfist a lot. It was actually it's actually been a really enjoyable experience to play Overwatch again.
Overwatch
which is
not
really
a fun
sad.
game. Don't buy it. Especially not for $12 on the Humble Bundle monthly subscription, where we just got it. It's $12 right now through Humble Bundle. I highly suggest if you were thinking about picking up Overwatch, you go get it there because it's cheap.
Agreed. The other thing happening in my life this weekend, I went down to Pennsylvania, visited some of Laura's friends. We did a lot of stuff around the house. I mean, not around the house, but around the home down there in terms of dance parties.
Whoa.
We also went out to some pretty cool restaurants in the area.
Sounds good.
I had some of the best shrimp and grits I've ever had. And of course, when you have a delicious meal, you throw in some liquor or alcohol with it. So we decided there's a really nice cafe restaurant, but it's BYOB.
Nice.
So we brought a couple bubble of Mum's Napa sparkling wine. We had the Brut and the Rosé. The Brut was pretty good. It's my first time that I can recall having Mum Napa. It's pretty decent for the
Okay.
price range. Slightly above your like entrees, but below your like moe. Um, so it's that like I would say more of a mid range for me price range, which was pretty good. Enjoyed that, but the real hero of the night was the chilled vodka
Nice.
at the
Vodka
table.
is always the hero of the night.
It was an Irish vodka called Straw Boys, and
Okay.
when chilled, it's freaking delicious. We were just drinking it straight Russian style
All right.
at the table, and it was pretty good, I gotta say. And a lot of people might have overindulged, but you know, I had a good time. It was all good.
Very
We also
good.
had a Grenache Syrah, which is a GSM blend, whatever that is. You know,
Okay. I
GSM
understand.
wine blend. Apparently, it's a very common blend. I had heard of it for this first time this weekend.
It's
Mourvedre.
probably pretty. Is that like a dry red wine? Perhaps.
I'll tell you what. That would have been my about fifth glass of whatever that night, so
It
can't
was
give you a lot
going
of
down
tasting
smooth.
notes. But what I can say is it had cats in spacesuits on the label, and it was
That's how you
super
get
adorable.
those cool people to buy those cool wines. That's awesome.
That was the main attraction of this thing. And for the first time in a long time, my roundup I think might take 5 minutes or less. I'm done. I'm out.
Woo! He did it. Congratulations, Ivan. You're usually the movie guy. I'm impressed you didn't see a movie this week. But I'm usually the gaming guy. And I'll tell you, I did a lot of gaming this week. Mostly because The Amazing Spider-Man came out on Friday of last week. And so I got to completing that game. I beat the game. I've actually...
Nice.
I don't recall buying an open world game in the past 3 years and beating it so quickly. I actually really enjoyed the whole experience pretty much, and currently I'm just cleaning up some side quests to do so I can get the platinum trophy hopefully. But I'll tell you that it has a lot of really good pacing throughout the game. You never feel like you're the story is very engaging. I think they did a good job with Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson. There was a really interesting, well, not as interesting as Spider-Man can get, I guess, storyline between them. And I guess, spoiler alert, Miles Morales is in the game,
What?
which is cool. So you get to play various missions where you play as Mary Jane or Miles Morales in the game.
That's pretty
And
cool.
there are a lot of big boss fights that are really exciting. And the mission structures are pretty decent. And I think they did a pretty decent job with all the extraneous things that you can do in the game, like side missions and collectibles and things like that. There's not like an overwhelming amount of them as you might find in a Ubisoft game like Assassin's Creed or Far Cry. But there's not, too little to do. There's still quite a lot to do in the game. And there's a lot of fun things to do. Spider-Man games are known for giving you a bunch of different suits to have. And you can unlock, I think, something like maybe 15 suits or 20 suits. So that's really exciting. And they all
And they
have
each
different
have their
powers.
own. Nice.
Yeah, they all have their own powers, and the cool thing about it is you can take the powers from the other suits and just put them onto a different suit. So you don't even, like, let's say you have a power that you really like, but you didn't like what the suit looked like, and you like a different suit, it's totally fine. You can mix and match. So I think that's a really cool feature. Just gives you, complete control over the character. And of course the gameplay is what everyone's been talking about. It's a very exciting game. I highly suggest, if you're looking for an open world game right now, before Red Dead Redemption comes out, pick this one up if you have a PS4. I think it's really fun and worth playing.
I've only heard good things, so.
Yeah, no, I really like the game. And I also just recently picked back up Octopath Traveler because I was looking for something to play on the Switch. And I sunk 60 hours into that game. I beat a couple of the storylines. And then I put it down. I'm like, okay, it's time to move on. I picked it back up and I jumped right back in. The cool thing about that game is it gives you, when you start a story mission, it gives you a recap of the story right then and there. So you don't even feel lost if you've picked it up, 2 or 3 months after the fact. So I was really happy about that. But then I stumbled upon this incredibly hard boss that gives you, I ended up beating it after I looked up the strat online, had like this crazy optimization and that you can just pretty much defeat this boss very easily if you just optimize a few things in your strategy. But it gives you this really cool
like a cheat code, Julien.
It's pretty much cheating what I did. It was really horrible. That boss stood no chance. I was incredibly over leveled for it also. I just didn't know what to do. But it gives you this job class that makes you super overpowered anyways. So like destroying things left and right. I feel like this crazy sorcerer. It's awesome. So I'm really into that game now.
Do you prefer when you are like Dark Souls level much weaker than everything, or like super overpowered to everything?
I like the grind to get to the point where you're super overpowered, where that gives you a sense of accomplishment, but after a while being super overpowered is boring.
I agree.
Yeah, so that's my opinion on that. So we'll see how long I last with Octopath Traveler now that I'm really powerful. Aside from that, I drank some beers with my friends this weekend. Got Modelo, I think, and nothing exciting. Modelo Especial is nice.
It's a nice, smooth, cheap beer.
It's definitely cheap, I'll tell you that much. I like that beer. And then I also had a vodka soda. That's what I had. But I didn't get like blasted or anything. Just enjoyed some company, good friends. And then I also played the Call of Duty Blackout PC beta, which is pretty fun, I have to say. Call of Duty has, okay, so it's Call of Duty's take on the what's it called, the Fortnite formula, the Battle Royale formula. So they drop you in, it's a map, you got to kill everyone, or you can go in with a teammate and you got to kill everyone and be the last person. Everyone knows what Fortnite is. I'm not even going to explain it. But what they have is they've given you Call of Duty controls, Call of Duty guns, and you pick up perks on the ground. So you can have, for instance, like the Iron Lung perk. In Call of Duty with the sniper, you have to hold your breath to keep the scope from swaying. So I guess you can hold your breath longer with that perk. They have all the cool grenades that you would expect. And the cool thing that they added in Call of Duty, which I can't recall ever happening in a Call of Duty, is they've added vehicles. So you can fly around in a helicopter. There's ATVs floating around. There's a bunch of different things that you can ride. So that's really exciting. Get around the map a lot faster that way. And so basically where I come down on it is that I like PUBG and everything about PUBG except for the aiming in PUBG. I'm so bad at it. I'm really bad at the actual gameplay of PUBG, but I like the idea, the idea of, running around, the whole Battle Royale formula. But I get how Call of Duty works because Call of Duty has always worked, I think. In fact, after Call of Duty 4, you see military shooters across the board adopt Call of Duty's or try to emulate Call of Duty. And Call of Duty has always had super tight controls, super tight aiming, and aiming that made sense to me at least, because we spent so much time in college playing it. So I fell right back into it, even though I was playing on PC, not on console. So it seemed pretty right to me, and I got a couple kills already, which is more than I can say that I've done in PUBG, even though we've won a game in PUBG.
Nice. Yes, we have. Winner, chicken dinners.
Go watch that video on YouTube, our YouTube channel, Hungover Gaming. It's a very funny video. But yeah, also, screw that video. Go watch Ivan's new video that just came out last Friday, where he played The Last of Us in preparation for The Last of Us 2, which will be coming out in probably 2020. But that gives us plenty of time to finish the game.
That's right. We'll do it right here on, our YouTube channel. So maybe not this, depending on how you're watching. Like, could be on YouTube, could be on Twitch.
Yeah. Hey,
it could be on iTunes,
Twitch.
Google Play. You could be on
I'll do it.
SoundCloud, but it's on YouTube.
Just listen. Yeah, it's a video.
Right here, if you put it in
subscribe to our YouTube
right
channel. Yeah, I'll put it over your face. Anyways, Ivan, you're the segue guy. That's all I've got.
I don't remember what the first piece of news we were going to do.
Well,
so this week we're doing a slightly different format to see if it's more interesting for us to do an hour-long conversation about one topic or about like 10 to 15-minute conversations surrounding several different news topics in the week, especially since we sometimes end up saying the same thing or circling back to the same point without really talking. So maybe now, instead of drawing out to 30 minutes of nonsense back and forth, we can really focus in and talk about some things that were interesting us this week. I think starting with
okay, so Neil Degrasse Tyson just released his published his book, or he didn't publish. A publishing company published it. What the name of the book is? Accessory to War. Let me pull it up in the background here in just a bit. Boom, there it is. So this book outlines pretty much. Neil Degrasse Tyson is a renowned astrophysicist, or at least he's the director of the Hayden Planetarium in New York City, and he's very famous in that he promotes science education and science in mainstream media and things like that, and just overall science literacy for a general populace. That's his main message, I would say. So he does know he does know quite a lot about the history of science. So when he was writing this book, his idea is that he wanted to discuss and tell the tale of it's called the unspoken alliance between astrophysics and the military. So he obviously specifically comes from the astrophysicist's point of view, because a lot of science was funded by the military. Obviously, you have chemistry, biologists, and physicists working together in the Manhattan Project and things like that. But he wanted to come through from the astrophysicist's point of view, which wasn't really that big of a field of science until the military got involved, actually, which is the interesting thing. It generally was just people looking up in the stars and not having much else to say about it. I mean, obviously they were able to tell the astrophysicists, or the people who understood, the astrophysicists of the age, that understood the changes in the seasons based off of the positions of the stars and the moon and things like that, were able to plant crops and be healthier, and that's where agriculture sort of started, actually, was from people who understood the movement of the heavenly bodies. So
the same way that we had a lot of dedicated astronomical tools which helped the age of exploration and things like that. So science has been intrinsically linked to discovery and exploration, civilization's growth, etc. And I think the thing that this book is really tapping into is the strength and might of the largest military power in the world, being the United States, while also being the power engine behind a lot of science and scientific discovery. The U.S. has a ton of money that goes into funding science. Newly, a lot of private funding, as we discussed in one of our previous episodes, but also we have military funding that is also dedicated to science, grants that are given through various departments throughout the U.S. government that go into scientific research, either basic research, applied research, or applied tech. And so we have a lot of different spaces in which the U.S. government supplies the funding for science research or private research, and we have a lot of military application and military presence across the world. So what is the link, right, between military application and scientific research? And a lot of the times we have kind of, like Julien was saying, a very linear connection, right? So we wouldn't have an atomic bomb, we wouldn't have ICBMs without also having Apollo 11 and Sputnik, right? So we
wouldn't have Apollo 11 and Sputnik if we didn't have the atomic, if the Manhattan Project didn't really have. That was before we went to the moon.
Yeah.
I'm
linking different ideas. The order of which I was saying things isn't really the crux of the argument.
Right.
The same scientific research.
You know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I'm saying that the military application of ICBMs and nuclear weapons, nuclear bombs,
yes,
was it Little Boy and Fat Man, are the same basic scientific research that went into eventually like Sputnik before an ICBM,
that's right. Yeah.
and then Apollo 11 after basically the technology of ICBMs was created. Right? So it's all kind of a back and forth link and a back and forth dialogue between civilian or scientific exploration and military application.
Yeah. So, it's cool.
Yeah, and no, again, the examples I was giving being examples from one cycle, not necessarily in the correct chronological order. But I think that it's an interesting examination, especially in the echo chamber of Space Force.
Right, of course, right. Which Donald Trump has decided to name, I guess, his new branch of the government, or of the defense, quote unquote, his new branch. I would say he wants to call it the Space Force, even though we've really been militarizing space for, since we sent things into space. I would say, I mean, having satellites up there to map the, using GPS in general, all our phones, that's all a military research. GPS came out of the military research. It was first used by the military, so we've militarized space already.
It's an interesting thing. Like, we have spy satellites, of course, that
that
orbit.
too. Exactly.
So there is military application within space, but the thing that I think was kind of the beauty of space is that the idea of space being what could be the only neutral ground going forward, right? This is the basic assumption of Star Trek, is that when we go to space...
The prime directives? What is that?
Yeah, it's one of the prime directives. I don't remember, because I think when we talk about Star Trek's prime directive, it's like, don't interfere with a different civilization. But,
right, exactly.
But like, before that happened, of course, there had to be unity among the Earth.
Okay.
So I think it is kind of like, I think we have seen, as the technology has expanded, and like the space race was obviously both scientific in its nature and military in its application, right? But I think that the eventual hope was that the Cold War would end and that people could use, like, the peoples of the world could use space to everyone's advantage. And now Space Force is kind of like No, that won't happen. Same way
Okay.
that Russia wanted to do expansive, like territorial claims in regions that were considered international, in like the North Pole area and things like that.
Hmm.
I think this is the way of doing that, but it should be more like Antarctica, which is like an international research
Research
area,
area. Yeah. I mean, that's why we have the ISS, the International Space Station,
which
up
has
there.
a
Right?
leak in it.
Yes, it had a leak in there. But I mean that exists for doing zero gravity experiments and whatever else they do up there. I'm not really sure. I guess they're trying to test whether they can grow plants in zero gravity, that type of thing. All things that need to be sorted out, but I think it's a very expensive way of doing it personally. But I'm glad it exists, honestly. I think it's really, and of course the effects, the psychological and physical effects on humans, being in zero gravity for an extended period of time is really important to assess, and unfortunately we're doing it with live guinea pigs, but um, with, I mean, live humans actually, sorry, but that's all funded by, well, partially funded by NASA at least, and you know, so these, and I believe, I guess NASA's its own uh, governmental agency, but in America, but I'm sure there's some crossover between NASA and the Department of Defense, for instance. I'm not sure.
Yeah, probably
But
scientific research has some correlations in between either of them. Uh, growing spiders in space is a thing,
God damn it,
and
no,
then
hell
you
no.
can have spider silks.
Jesus
And
Christ, no.
spider silk can be used to make Kevlar suits. No, I don't know
Dude,
the
I
exact
saw
specifics,
the
but clearly there are links
spider.
between space and military technology. Whether they're on the ISS or not is a different question, because there are so many different astronauts and cosmonauts aboard there. I think it'd be harder to do like a, this is only for the United States.
Exactly
Um,
right, yeah.
But I think what the book outlines is the connection, with the interesting connection between science and, I feel like we would never think that Neil deGrasse Tyson's own research or anything would provide the foundation for a technology or something that would then destroy human lives. But what is the implication of a scientist developing a technology and then the militarization of that technology? Do scientists have an obligation to know how their technology would be used to limit its use in terms of the destruction of people's lives? Or is that out of the scope of a scientist's realm?
No,
Is
sorry. Keep going.
No, more of like, should science be self-censoring, or is there a different regulation system?
That is really, that's like the moral conundrum that a lot of scientists faced during the Manhattan Project. They clearly knew what they were doing, and the ramifications of their work was many countless. I mean, they have an estimate of the amount of people that it killed. The atomic bombs over Nagasaki and Hiroshima, but I mean, Einstein and Oppenheimer and I can't think of the other scientists on the Manhattan Project, but they all had to face the reality in their lifetimes of what they had done. So, but they also knew that doing this research and making these breakthroughs in science have progressed human civilization to what it is now, 2018. We wouldn't be where we are without the Manhattan Project, by no means. The advancements in the medical field, advancements in technology and the like, have all become out of, essentially have branched out of the Manhattan Project, which is at some point you have to like weigh the pros and the cons, right? So it obvious. I mean, we all like to say that the military is, or at least from the American point of view in 2018, we always like to say that the military is like the big government bad guys out there to get us and or get other people. Sorry, they're here to protect us. But I mean, they do fund a lot of science, and they do a lot of good, and they do help a lot of people out in America at least. So I guess I'm going off on tangents now. It's an interesting discussion to have, and I assume Neil Degrasse Tyson discusses it quite elegantly in his book. We have not read the book. Perhaps we should both read it and then touch back on this topic, I think.
Yeah, that might be good. I think it's an interesting thing that I would like to investigate further.
Yeah, so we wanted to bring up this topic to people who listen to us and people who maybe don't listen to us, found us for the first time. And we'll look into reading this book. Tell us in the comment section below if you want us to do a review of the book. We haven't done that. We've reviewed movies because that's easy for both of us to watch and consume during the week. But reading a book would take a little longer, of course, depending on how good it is. I don't know. It's probably a really good book. I think he's a funny guy.
He's also, it seems pretty, he has a knack for translating hard science into readable material.
But Ivan, we're not only here to talk about this book. We've got other topics to talk about. This is old news. Let's talk about Nike. Do you know anything about a recent ad that Nike put out?
Yeah, speaking of military things, so Colin Kaepernick is a very well-known name throughout the United States and possibly the world at this point for his role as leading a protest movement within the National Football League of players who would kneel during the national anthem as a protest against police brutality and the mistreatment of black individuals within America by police. And so this caught fire in terms of the national discourse. Colin Kaepernick was basically blacklisted from football. He has never been hired as a quarterback, despite the dearth of capable quarterbacks last year, following the injuries of a lot of starting quarterbacks throughout the league, and just like a dearth of good quarterback play, where Colin Kaepernick would be quite possibly one of the best replacements. So it seems that there was a conspiracy to not allow him to play, and at the same time, in terms of the national discourse, people got very upset at Colin Kaepernick's leading of the protest against the national anthem, saying that this is just respecting the troops. Whereas, interestingly enough, one of the ways that Kaepernick decided to start kneeling is he had a conversation with an ex-Green Beret. Who told him that would be a better alternative to sitting during the national anthem. It would show some respect to the troops and to the national anthem and the flag, while not fully justifying the reason, not fully, while still protesting the treatment of Americans, black Americans specifically. So Kaepernick basically banned from football, but here we go, back again. He's reconnected with Nike, and Nike has had a brilliant way of bringing Kaepernick back into the national spotlight by putting him in an ad. And the ad's title is something like Dream Bigger or something like that.
Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. That's just a picture. I don't
Dream
want to show
crazy.
that because Nike's obviously going to give us a copyright strike.
Right.
But
so the ad's title is Dream Crazy, and it shows a variety of different people and sports stars going through a variety of different things, from the fastest marathon runner in the world to Serena Williams and Colin Kaepernick. So we have a variety of depictions of people and things, and according to Adweek, For instance, the first 40 seconds have nearly identical emotional reactions, but after the first 40 seconds, it starts to get into mentioning words like refugees, and Republicans have spikes of emotional intensity. And then there are more spikes of emotional intensity when both Colin Kaepernick are shown and Serena Williams. So it's clear that these strong emotional responses tend to be on the more negative side. And this research was conducted by Spark Neuro, which is a startup that conducts neuroscience tests for brands and media companies. And so they wanted to take a highlight of Democrats, Republicans, and independent, I assume self-reported Democrat, Republican, independent, who were watching this commercial.
It's a pretty crazy country we live in, huh? Yeah. I mean, I definitely support Colin Kaepernick. I'll say it on the internet. I think what he did was, completely justified. I don't think it was really disrespectful at all. I think he was just trying to send a message to, what this country stands for. He's trying to, what the idea of America is, that everyone should be accepted here and be free to do what they want to do, right? Or as long as it's lawful, right? So, and quite clearly, it was founded on slavery and the oppression of black people and of course many other races, but mostly black people, and that sort of seed of hatred has never quite left America, or really, a lot of the world is similar, but in America it's a lot more violent, it's a lot more talked about, and yet we still face it. I mean, still black people face this every day. So him being able to use this platform to send his message is awesome. I think it's great. But obviously people are burning their shoes and not supporting Nike anymore, and voicing their opinions as well. So it's I guess
what's really intriguing in this as well is that the Nike is the official and exclusive provider of NFL apparel.
Yes.
And that deal is through 2028, and Nike is the obviously the company that put out this ad. So is this really a big brand and a very large company taking a stand in support of a group of people and a message, or is this just a ploy to gain notoriety, etc.?
Well,
for the Nike brand.
I think it's a little bit of both. I guess it's sort of similar. Well, not similar, but I mean, you could say the same thing about like Disney and Black Panther, right? Mm-hmm. Disney, huge company, wants to make money. They own everything. They're going to own everything. And they get, good publicity. Not that this is good publicity for Nike, but we all know that as our president has shown, we all know that bad publicity is good publicity. No matter any publicity is good publicity. So it's sort of I guess in a way similar to Black Panther and Disney. Disney sees an opportunity, and you talked about this specifically. Disney sees an opportunity to release a movie, all black cast, like we've all seen Black Panther, and they see an opportunity to make money off of that, but also get good publicity for releasing it, right? So Nike could potentially be, I guess the question is, does intention matter from Nike's point of view, right? Is their intention could be that we can sell more shoes and more NFL apparel because we have Colin Kaepernick here, and he's in the media now. So, or he was in the media, and he was a very controversial person to many people. Or it could be that someone at Nike, an executive at Nike, convinced the production crew that this would be a really good idea to help send this message across. I guess you could also
Does
compare,
it matter?
Does it matter?
Does it matter? As long as the message is getting out.
It's like
I guess
a rich
6 of one, half a
person
dozen of the
donating
other,
to
yeah.
charity for tax write-off. Does it matter? He or she still donated to charity. I don't know.
That is good in general, yes.
Yes, right? So, not that Colin... Sorry, I guess that could be taken out of context horribly. Colin Kaepernick is not a charity type of situation.
Right.
Sorry for comparing them in that way, but...
But I don't think it is. I don't think it's the same thing. I think we're talking about a rich person donating to a nonprofit or something that has a message and a something like that,
right,
versus a national brand company that is going to employ or give money and standing to somebody who has a message, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are two ways of funding and using large platforms in order to go with a particular message that you're trying to send. And is the money, like the money incentive behind a platform, very important? And I would say in the current climate that we live in, it does not seem that it is important whether or not it is a money-seeking venture or not. And contrary to that, I actually think it is important in that you want to see companies are looking to check all that I just said. I just came up with what I'm trying to say.
Here's the answer. Vaughn's got it.
It is important that it is a money-making venture, because for the first time in a long time, a community of people outside of like white middle-class people can vote with their wallet and show support for something that is representative of something that they want to uphold, something that they want to see, and something that they might want to support in the future of becoming more like that. So whether it be Black Panther or Barack Obama or this Nike's increase of Nike sales, we're seeing more donations or more purchases from black communities to support black athletes, black politicians, and black movie productions, from director to actor to anything in between in terms of the production side of film. So it is important in the system that we live in which we have said on this podcast before, right? Vote with your wallet. Talk to your representative, etc. If voting with your wallet is saying that if you are going to show and represent and support something that I hold dear to my own identity, political ideology, etc., I am going to support you. And so I think that is important. I think that in general I would disagree with that sentiment as a whole. But in the society in which we live currently, that is the way of going about doing it. So I think that's where I've come.
Okay.
On that side, do you agree or disagree?
I definitely agree. I mean, we have to accept that there are a few companies that run the world right now. So, if they're going to use their platform to send a decent message that I agree with, I will support them. Well, yeah, I've bought Nike shoes in the past. I haven't bought any since this ad came out, but that's because I don't need new shoes. But and I also don't know what else they sell. But I agree. I mean, I've heard. I don't know exactly the ethics of how Nike produces their shoes or whatever. So I don't know that's a different story than this. But I definitely support them in their message, and of course Colin Kaepernick's message, and I'm glad that they were bold enough to put him in their ad. I think that's really cool, and I think they got at least one thumbs up from me. I don't know. We don't need two. They don't need
Well,
the Hungover. Do they get the Hungover gaming seal of approval? Who knows?
For now, possibly.
For now, we'll see where it goes. Nike stock reaches an all-time high after this controversial ad, according to Scripps National, CNN. So this was posted on September 14th, so a couple days ago.
Yeah, so there you go. And Nike is improving.
Yeah.
WKBW Buffalo. Hey,
it worked. So, but if it worked, that means maybe they'll try to continue sending messages similar to this, and maybe that will change. And as we all know, advertisement changes the the general populace's if too much or enough exposure to a message will convince at least some people that this message is worth thinking about at least. So
and then we might get more celebrities or people with a large public platform to be able to speak out in support of different issues and raise the issues. However, we also not just need the issue to be raised, but a solution to be presented and solved. Like, yes, it's important. Like, I think Nike's getting a lot of publicity for basically employing Colin Kaepernick as opposed to what Colin Kaepernick was protesting. So it's kind of like, it's like a weird, are we talking about police brutality, or are we talking about giving Colin Kaepernick a job after he kneeled during the national anthem? Like, why are people supporting it?
Well, I feel like maybe some people don't even know why he kneeled, and they just are mad at him kneeling during the national anthem. So that's a different story for a different day. Because, Ivan, we have one more story to cover, and it's it's affecting many, many people along the southern east coast of America currently, and that's Hurricane Florence. Can you tell me a little bit about this devastating hurricane that's hit North Carolina, Georgia, and a little bit of Florida, I believe? Or all of Florida, I'm not sure, actually.
I cannot tell you all that much. It is an seriously impactful storm that we have seen. So we've seen at least 31 deaths, according to...
It's more northern. Oh, or at least now it hit Virginia as well. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact areas that it hit. That was, hindsight is 2020. I suck now. I'm sorry.
So, pulling from the New York Times live updates, the authorities have blamed the storm for at least 31 deaths, including a 1-year-old boy.
New York Times have some really good photographers.
Yeah, well, yes. There are evacuation orders that have been there. So previous to the storm hitting, governors of like North Carolina, Florida, the states that were going to be hit, issued mandatory evacuation for many different areas, and then evacuation orders are still being issued due to the torrential rain, which is, I think, record-setting rains.
Yes, definitely.
For many of the rivers and lakes in the area. It's produced a lot of flash floods, and people have been trapped due to that. So it is it's going to have a very high economic toll.
Yes.
When it's all said and done. It's going to have a lot of personal toll based on people's belongings, memories, etc. So things that might have a physical value, like a photograph has a value, but also just like the things that people remember, and it has already taken some lives. People have begun already comparing the government response and the FEMA response to this hurricane and the Puerto Rico hurricane that we had last year. Was that Irma?
Hurricane Irma, I believe. That's the one that was talked about the most. But there weren't there three, actually?
Yes,
possibly
there were three that came.
Three that hit Puerto Rico, I think, which is horrible. Obviously, to think about. I guess.
Right. Yeah. Irma was a Category 5 major hurricane that came through that area, and was one of the. So there was Harvey, Irma, and probably one more. But for instance, the FEMA funding was very low for Irma due to the response that was already being put into Hurricane Harvey.
Right.
So there was a difficulty in terms
hit
of
Houston, didn't it? Or
right. So Hurricane Harvey was an intense hurricane itself. Then there was Irma. Then there's like Hurricane Maria, which also was a Category 5, which came in, and so they all came on top of each other.
Yes.
Like Hurricane Maria, the last hurricane that came through, was the most costly in Puerto Rico's history. All told, they caused billions of dollars of damage. And so with that in our very recent history, and still stuck in our minds, we are looking towards the response that we will have for Hurricane Florence.
Right.
Although I think there was also a little bit of overcoverage of this storm.
Of this Hurricane Florence?
Of this particular storm to begin with. And now I think that there are real reasons to cover this storm, but I think the fascination with the last year's hurricane season upped the coverage for this year's hurricane season.
Yes.
I think one of the dumbest things in the history of news coverage is sending a person out into the middle of hurricane level rains and winds and being like, hey, is it bad out there? Yes, it's super bad.
Right, of course. I mean, we don't need that type of coverage, but we need to spread the message that people are stranded in areas because of flooding. So we need to send that message. We don't necessarily need to put more people in danger by sending newscast horror. I feel like it's the newbie newscasters get sent out there, right? Because they don't want to send the veterans out there, but that's just, I feel like that's unique to American weather coverage, that will send a real person into the eye of the storm just to get the shot, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm sorry to make light of this horrible natural disaster that struck the east coast of America, but it's really this falls on the Trump administration. This is all happening under his watch, right? So and his department, because he's in control of or he can at least, I'm not exactly sure how FEMA works personally, but I know that the president has it's disaster relief, so the president has to give executive orders to send FEMA out there in full force. I'm guessing something like that. I'm not exactly sure.
Well, he appoints the head of FEMA, and so that was a big issue for the last hurricane season.
So that's more or less under his influence. So this is he's already seen 2 hurricanes hit under his presidency. By contrast, I mean, Obama saw there was one hurricane, right? There must have been more, but I know there was one that hit New York. That was under Obama, right?
Sandy.
That was Hurricane Sandy, yeah.
Yeah, and the ramifications of Hurricane Sandy are going to be felt, for instance, for the next 2 years on the L.
Of course, right, the L train's shutting down. Oh, good riddance to all those losers that live in Williamsburg. But I joke about that, but that really sucks. We're still dealing with Sandy repercussions. So let me tell you, it's horrible. The trains suck. So that's how long a hurricane can affect. That happened when we were in college, man. That was almost 10 years ago at this point. No, it wasn't that long ago, but it almost.
It's 2012.
Yeah, it's 2012. Yeah. So 6 years ago, man. And New York still hasn't fully recovered from Hurricane Sandy, and that was a minor hurricane when you look at the the effects of
the scale of things,
the scale of things like Hurricane Irma, and of course, lest we forget, under George W. Bush, Hurricane Katrina, that of course New Orleans still has not recovered from. If you drive by the, I believe, the 9th ward or the 11th, I don't know how the neighborhoods work in New Orleans.
The 9th ward is
the 9th ward. Okay.
Is the one that was the hardest hit.
I was driven by that when we were in college, when I took a road trip down to New Orleans, and my friend drove me by there, and you could still see like overgrown areas by weeds and things because, you know, completely washed away the houses there. So that city will at this point, it's like, will they ever recover to what New Orleans was before Hurricane Katrina hit? You know, this is
Harvey was the same level of economic damage. If you're so going by this list of costliest hurricanes, it says that Katrina is $125 billion US. That's 2005, and then it's also stated that Harvey is $125 billion. But it also says that Maria, remember Maria also hit last year, was 91.6, and Irma, which also hit last year, was 64.8. So 3 of the 5 most costly hurricanes in the recording of this list, which comes from the 90s on, came in 2017, and all hit kind of the same area of the southeast United States. So this is a crucial year in terms of the responsibility of the government to maintain a certain level of response after such a damaging thing. Right.
I get really mad at this from, you know, obviously that many people have died. I'm mad at that. But, I mean, and the lack of response I'm mad at. But I'm also mad from a scientific standpoint, you know. Scientists have been excuse my language, have been fucking, you know, shouting about this, you know, climate change for decades now. And we're finally starting to see the effects of climate change firsthand. So it's time to fucking wake up and do something about it, you know? The overall climate is warming up. So guess what that means? The warm currents from the south, in the south eastern portion of the Atlantic Ocean are going to be driven up into and form hurricanes over that vast area of water, and that's gonna fucking railroad the entire east coast of America, and we are directly seeing the effects of it right now. And if we don't do anything about it soon, I don't know if the east coast of America is going to exist for much longer. So it's really, this is one example. Hurricane Florence, you know, what we had last year was crazy. There was that meme that went around of that guy, the weather guy, that was trying to explain how many hurricanes were hitting the East Coast, because there were 3 that did, and that's crazy. That 3 hurricanes in one season is nuts.
Of such magnitude.
Yeah.
Generally, we don't have that level of hurricanes hitting, like Category 5 hurricanes hitting over and over and over in the span of just a few weeks is generally not something that happens, and that is the increasing evidence of abnormal events and intensity of said events throughout the world is really making it difficult, or I would say impossible, for people to deny the effects of climate change.
And I want to say that I think I just read a study recently that there's little evidence to correlate that climate change is increasing the number of hurricanes hitting the East Coast, but they will certainly be much more severe in the coming years, and indefinitely. There's nothing we can do about it now, but we can prevent or at least lower the intensity of hurricanes to come in the next 20 to 30 years, which is what we have to think about. You know, when Florida doesn't exist anymore because it's underwater, it's going to be too late. But we can prevent that from happening if we
those are the regional ones
yes.
that we have in the United States. But there was a huge landslide that killed many people, I think, due to a typhoon recently in India.
And also there was a typhoon that hit Japan as well. They're called typhoons in Southeast Asia, but it's actually just the same thing as a hurricane, I believe. Hurricanes and typhoons are the same type of storm.
I think monsoon is also something of a similar nature.
I believe, isn't monsoon just rainy season? They just get a lot of rain in tropical zones. But
it's confusing to me.
And it's important to note, I mean, if you're at all interested about meteorology, why we get hurricanes on the East Coast as opposed to the West Coast. The West Coast doesn't have warm currents of water coming up, and that that water obviously evaporates above the surface of the ocean. So the Atlantic Ocean, if you look at any temperature charts by I guess, is that longitude? No, it's a latitude, right?
Latitude is the ladder.
Horizontal? Yeah. Okay, so
longitude
if you look
vertical.
at temperatures of Pacific Ocean versus Atlantic Ocean by latitude, you'll see pretty big differences in the temperatures. And so the fact that the Atlantic Ocean is warmer in those areas allows for these storms to build up over large areas of water. And then that obviously slams the east coast of America, in the south at least. And of course, as we saw in that was 2013. No, that was 26 years ago, 2012. Hurricane Sandy hit New York City. Which, when's the last time a hurricane hit New York City? I don't know.
2012.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Hopefully, we don't see one soon.
To be an asshole about it. Yeah. Hopefully not. I mean, the most severe things have been blizzards, but not hurricanes. It's very unusual for a hurricane to hit New York City.
Right, definitely. But anyways, that's about the news for the week. Tell us in the comment section below if you like our idea of talking about 3 different topics as opposed to one. If you think our conversations get a little long-winded when we talk about one topic, perhaps this is better for us, in that we don't have to come up with one topic and try to fill an hour's worth of time, of your time. Yeah, I like this conversation. I think we had a pretty decent one. We'll try to talk about Neil Degrasse Tyson's new book, if we can both pick it up and finish it in a decent time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also sent you a link to the Atlantic's coverage of the typhoon, the super typhoon. It's got some really stirring images. But yes, I enjoyed the news roundup format as well. I would say we missed a couple stories that are severely political. Paul Manafort agreeing to a plea deal and flipping on somebody who is above him, most likely, whoever that might be, Trump. And then continuing coverage of the Robert Mueller investigation, which we have kind of avoided, due mostly to me being Russian and not really wanting to talk about it.
That happened in Hong Kong? Oh, shit.
Yeah, man. And then the Brett Kavanaugh accusation, which is going to be really talked about next Monday when both Brett Kavanaugh and his accuser are brought before the hearing.
Yeah, we of course we're not CNN. We don't have 24 hours a day to talk about news, so we can't cover everything. But tell us in the comment section below if you want us to talk about anything in the future. We can definitely, Ivan knows more about this Manafort topic than I do. I should have been more responsible and been keeping up with the story. I'm sorry, I haven't. That is my fault. But Ivan, maybe we can talk about it next week.
Maybe I think we probably should, because it's getting to the point where it's
story.
hard not to talk about it if you have a podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there are professional plumbers associations podcasts which are about to talk about.
Oh God, we gotta as long as we do it before Car Talk does it. All right. So they're
dead.
I know, that's why it was the joke. Okay, but they're consistently
so we might
number
make it.
one. Those guys are awesome. Go listen to Car Talk instead of us. Yvonne, we listened to this podcast, or at least I listen to this podcast every single week. But it would be really useful if you guys listening out there would write us a review on iTunes. That really helps with our visibility, and maybe we can get some more topics out there because more people will be listening. Yvonne, we also end our podcast every single week in a song in a segment called Hungover Radio. This is where you, the listener, can send in music, possibly live in the Twitch chat if I can figure that out. Of course, you just send us a link, but you could totally, maybe opt to send your own private music that you've made, or public music, hopefully, that you wrote, produced, played an instrument on, etc. We would love to give you some free advertisement there and share your music and, of course, listen to your music with the community. We put it at the end of the podcast every single week, and we will totally link you out in the description below. But if no one sends in a song, I get to pick one. And boy, have I picked a song that I'm happy about. There was a Nintendo Direct this week where they discussed the Nintendo Online system, which people are pissed off about. Okay, I'm sort of in the middle of the ground on that. Who cares about that? You know what they announced? Animal Crossing for the Nintendo Switch. It's coming out in 2019. I'm very excited.
Woo! Is that what they're doing instead of an online platform?
For in general,
yeah,
that would be sick. Who knows?
Just Animal Crossing.
It was just a
sorry,
logo.
guys.
I think that would be pretty cool. Maybe they should make it an MMO. That would be sick. They also announced
Animal Crossing is actually going to become like the Internet Explorer of of the Switch.
That would be sick. But I've chosen Animal Crossing GameCube full theme song, parentheses, high quality, close parentheses, the YouTube video to play for you guys. I hope you guys enjoy this song, and I hope you guys get hyped for Animal Crossing in the future. It's one of those relaxing games to play, I think. Anyways, Yvonne, thanks for doing this podcast. I hope we can do one on time next week. That would be awesome for both.
I agree completely.
All right.
Thank you, Julien. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll catch you next week. Bye.
Bye.